So hello, good afternoon to everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and welcome to this session which we have called The Road to RDA. So in this session we're going to get some views from the research funders that have been involved thus far through various means, and take a look at how we got here, what the intentions are that the funders have in providing support for RDA, and where we hope to go with the organisation. So we have 5 speakers. Carlos Morais Pires from the European Commission is going to speak first. A little bit of history about what's been happening over the last year. And then Alan Blatecki from NSF is going to talk about some of the principles behind RDA and what the funders want to see going forward, and how they intend to collaborate in supporting RDA in future. Sheila from Australia is going to talk about the involvement from Australia and the route that Australia is taking and their views about how to take things forward there. Costas from the Commission is now starting to look forward a little bit more, what is going to happen in Horizon 2020 and how the European Commission will support the RDA through that programme and through policies going forward. And then finally, Chris Greer from NIST in the US is also going to talk a little bit about looking forwards and how we envisage things going in the future. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Carlos.
So thank you, Juan, and good afternoon, everyone. It was for me a very nice morning session, and it's a pleasure for me to stand here now and share with you some of the things we have been doing on the size of the so-called initial group of funders. So I will say a little bit about the chronology and the brief history of what we have been doing behind the scenes, and some of you with us, what type of orchestration we are talking about, something about the relation between RDA and science and discovery, and of course acknowledgements to everyone that has worked. I start by my personal experience in the last 6 months or so, which I didn't know how to call it, but it's a sort of mailbox lag. And just to tell you what have been my daily work, and please give me a break. Because it starts with mails coming from Australia, and then when I'm about to reply, someone in Europe says something, and then Alan wakes up at 5 a.m. in the morning and 4 a.m. in the morning and sends an email, and then Leif from the North Pole sends some email about amending the contract of ICORDI, and I can't. Give me a break, please. So this has been really tough. And of course, Peter, and you know. So a bit of chronology. We started with a lot of actually reports and visions that frame a lot of what we have been discussing. So these reports have been produced by experts from fora like this one, and this is a bit of the starting point. And then I think kind of coincidence and people meeting in events like this one, we have started to exchange some of our difficulties in terms of funding research and infrastructures supporting research. And in the case of data, we found that we had really common problems. And in our dialogue with the National Science Foundation colleagues from the Australian National Data Service, we found that we need something not to design top-down architectures, although they are important, but to have the community action in place. But we didn't know really how to do it. So we have started to discuss more and more, and there were some important initial documents that gave a little bit the frame for our discussions. And these were a paper from Jean-Claude Guédon, Herbert van Sompel, Fred Friend, and Alan and Chris with the paper on the Data Web Forum, and Ross and Andrews in the discussion that we had in the EC Australia bilateral that we run every second year. So this was really at the beginning, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Then we met physically in the GRDI event in Brussels, and we started to get a little bit more an idea of how to go forward, but it was still a bit of a framework of action, but we were not really acting. In parallel, some of us were involved in the data working group of the G8+5 and plus Australia. And here you see some names: Colin, Juan, Alan, Devika, Norbert, Stefan, and so on. So we were discussing about principles and how to go towards global data infrastructures. And we have presented in Cape Town. Thanks, Colin, for all the support in Cape Town meeting. And this report was also very well received. So things started to become a bit redundant in different parts of the discussion, and we started to see that there were really common issues that we were talking about, the way we should act in terms of building global data infrastructures. Then we met again physically, some of us, in Lyon, in what we call in the European programs the consultation meeting, with a lot of people from our projects. Colleagues from NSF came and joined us in the discussion. So you see some of the names that were there at the time. And we discussed how to do it, when, who should be ready to come, and so on. But still, things were maturing, like today, by the way. Then, in Copenhagen, I think we had a big first step towards something more concrete, where we met in the context of International Conference on Research Infrastructure. There was really a global audience there. We had several sessions on data, and we had a pre-meeting on global data infrastructures organized by Peter and these folks. And it was a very productive meeting where we came out with the feeling that there was something really building in a very, very concrete terms of what should be the shape to take. But for me, the decisive moment that I went to Washington for the meeting, that were two meetings, if I'm not wrong, scheduled on 2 successive days at early October 2012. And then I came from that meeting and reporting back to the Commission. People said, so what happened? I said, well, there was a lot of people discussing about global data infrastructures, and I learned that we should stop talking, that we should not worry, because if things are not right from the start, there's no big deal about it. They will get right as we go on, and that the IETF and DWF and all this should be something like RDA. So, and that's where I first learned that the community was ready, I think, to do a big step, this step that we are taking today. Then, of course, things go on, and then we said, well, but we need to inform the G8+5 because they are somehow related. This could be a very good way to implement the recommendations of the G8+5 report. So just last week, Juan hosted a meeting, and the UK hosted a meeting of the G8+5, and we have presented RDA. John, Fran presented RDA to the members of the G8+5, and this was, again, very well received by the so-called group of senior officials. And today we are here in Gothenburg, and we are, of course, delighted to be here. So I remember that the principles was the easy thing to sell in terms of the European Commission mission as a funder, as a governmental organization. And these are, I think it's never too much to recall, that we think that RDA should be a forum or an alliance that is open, that is balanced, that reach consensus in a very informal way, because what you really want to do is to make things work. So let's stop talking and doing things. And this consensus, informal consensus, should include things like humming, for instance, and we borrow this from the fantastic IETF experience. It should be all about interoperating and not thinking from the top, but just getting things as they are and try to make them work together. And should be, of course, voluntary, because this morning we learned that the best things are when you don't really need money to put on it, because people are really keen and voluntary to do things. And should be non-profit, at least in first instance, because it's all about getting people together, supporting science, and then if there are innovation opportunities, businesses will take these opportunities for sure. So the way I've been discussing and learning from my peers in this initial group of funders is that the way we see it is the orchestra of RDA, whatever music it will play, is not so much as a classical orchestra, but rather many jazz bands together playing the way, I'm not an expert, but I like very much jazz, listening and playing and listening and going step by step. And then some harmonies will come out of this. The other message, and probably the only one that I really pass to you in this brief talk, is that at the end of the day, we are here to support science and better science and trying to be ready for a new way of discovery in terms of science. So this was borrowed from a fantastic lesson. In Portugal, we call it Jubilee lesson, when a professor retires, from Professor Alcácer, who presented the Borges poem about the moon, La Luna. So you can ask Alicia to say it in Spanish, because I'm Portuguese, so my pronunciation is not so good. But basically, the story says that someone like you, a crazy guy, decided to encode the whole universe in words. And when he was about to finish this book, he was so happy and so thrilled. He opened the door and he saw a bright thing in the sky, and he said, well, I forgot the moon. So what I want to say with this is that it's really difficult to achieve the impossible. Sorry for this. And one of the reasons, and this is for Chris, one of the reasons he forgot the moon, if you read then the poem, is that he was not able to distinguish the moon from the reflex in the sea. So he didn't have a digital object identifier. You see? Great. So, going back to the basics, I think what we are today here is to build an infrastructure and the basis for future of science. So probably what we are facing now is that science is approaching a limit in simplification, so we need to cope with complexity. And so I think data is what will allow us to go to the next step, data infrastructures. And finally, I'm really proud to be part of this jazz band of funders. I would like to say thank you to the Gothenburg city for hosting the RDA event. To all of you, because all your names do not fit in slides, but you are the important protagonists of RDA. To the non-governmental system structures teams, Juan and Peter and Leif and so on, for the incredible work they did. To the members of the initial council, Fran, John, and Ross, for the drive they give. And to my colleagues of the initial group of funders, because what I think made our work easy is because they comply fully with the RDA principles. Because talking to them, I found them open, balanced people, consensual, even sometimes we don't agree, interoperable, voluntary, and non-profit. So in Washington, at least 500 of us will be there. Thank you very much.